Hot list. Yahoo Sports. Check it out. Also free. Sports.yahoo.com. Number one guy in the list. Billy Napier, Florida. Buyout, 25 to 27 million. The seat is, Ross is calling it hot. It's hot and warm on this list. It's really not that long of a list. Ross, explain yourself. I don't think it takes much.
Yeah. Well, this one's kind of easy, right? This one, I think most would agree when you make calls to agents in the industry and administrators around the country and search firm guys. This is the one that comes up as not just the hottest seat maybe, but perhaps the move that could create a real domino effect this year and impact so many other programs. We see every year, right? A couple of big power conference school jobs open that create this ripple effect throughout the country. And I think this is the one that you can circle this year. Napier is entering his third year, and no longer do you automatically get a fourth season anymore, right? It used to be that entering your fourth year was the one you were judged by in a lot of ways, and now it's your second or third year you're judged by. Florida's going to one bowl game. They've gotten they missed out on the bowl last year, and so the pressure is on, so to speak. But the price is obviously incredibly stiff, right? And the schedule does not necessarily set up for a great year. It's maybe the most difficult last 5 games of any schedule that I've seen in a long time. Georgia and Jacksonville, at Texas, against LSU, against Ole Miss, at Florida State to finish the year. So it's tough. I don't know what Billy Napier has to get to win-wise, especially considering that schedule. But he needs to, I would imagine he needs to show pretty serious improvement in the team, which is certainly reaching a bowl, if not at least hitting that 8-ish win mark.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack here, I think, in the Napier situation. Starting with the fact that Florida just hasn't been able to get the right guy unless he can turn it around. I'm not saying he can't. I'm not, I don't like giving up on a coach in a season before it starts. If we had done that, Neil Brown never would have started last year at West Virginia. He was number one on the hot seat, and then they had a very good year. And now that whole thing has changed around from pessimism to optimism. Jim Harbaugh was very much on the hot seat 3 years ago and went to the playoff 3 years in a row and won a championship. So don't want to give up right away on Napier and on Florida. But, yeah, you go through the succession of Muschamp, McElwain, Mullen, and then you get to Napier, and I think everybody really felt like that was a good hire, and it just so far hasn't worked out. They were extremely young on defense last year, and that cost them. They didn't capitalize on having Anthony Richardson at quarterback, a top 5 NFL draft pick his first season, and then they replaced him with Graham Mertz at quarterback. It was a Wisconsin kind of reclamation project, and he wasn't terrible, but he's still Graham Mertz. He's going to give you only so much, I think, there, and he's back as the starter this year. And then, yes, to Ross's point, the schedule is just gruesome. I mean, so how, if you're Florida, do you apply any nuance here, or is it still just, well, we're Florida, we need to win 8, 9, 10 games? Man, you look at that slate, and it's going to be really hard to do, even if your team's pretty good. So if Napier had had this schedule last year and there was still some patience out there, I think you could get past whatever the record would be and say, all right, we'll give him another year. But if this is the third year and you're just getting your head kicked in, it gets a little more difficult. And hey, they have not been good. They've been pushed around by Kentucky, and that is the kind of thing that never used to happen to Florida. There was a period of time for like 3 decades where Florida did not beat Kentucky. Maybe not quite that long, but that's been one of those where they've just been dominated. And the way they finished last year, they lost their last 5 games, got blown out by Georgia. Georgia has left them way behind in terms of an annual kind of eye-to-eye rivalry there. So there's a lot of issues, but I think let the cake bake, let the season begin, and let's see where it starts going, starting with that really important first game against Miami.
I guess there's two things. One, it's like, everyone sits there and says, "Oh my God, it's the hardest schedule I've ever seen." You could get to mid-October and not win again, and not necessarily be that bad. I mean, at Tennessee and Kentucky before that final stretch too, as you said. I think Kentucky, like Pat, to your point, I think 4 of the last 5 for the Wildcats. You think you're winning it? I'm bullish on the Vols. So you sit there and say, we don't really care. Like, it's one of those years, and I know he has no proven track record, but it's like when everyone got hurt for or like the Spurs, like the San Antonio Spurs, you got Greg Popovich, like, all right, we don't have the guys this year. But now you don't necessarily get rid of a good coach. And I understand he doesn't have that track record, but that's the thing. I wanted to ask this just generally about Florida football. And they have won 3 national titles, right? Spurrier won 1 and 2 for Urban. Before Spurrier, historically, very up and down, and rarely really that good. I think there was a little bit of a Charlie Pell era. They were pretty good.
They were cheating like crazy too. Got busted.
It's been a few NCAA, collisions through the years. Yeah, I mean, it's called the swamp. It's I mean, you look at this, there's Galen Hall was a coach, didn't really do too well. Then you brought in Spurrier. Then there was Zook. Then there was Charlie Strong, or not really. Then Urban Meyer. Okay, great. Then Muschamp, Mullen, Napier. It's my question. Why isn't Florida better consistently?
Yeah.
Obviously, they won national titles. They can be great. It's Florida. Tons of talent. Tons of fan interest, great campus, great stadium, SEC. Why?
It's a great question. And, I think that when the Florida Revolution started, late 70s, early 80s, Bowden got Florida State going, and then Miami exploded. Florida was the last of the 3 to kind of get moving. And maybe that was part conference competition, but still, yeah, there were decades before that where the flagship school in the state really didn't get much traction. So it's mystifying why that was the case. And then it took, one of the greatest coaches we've probably ever seen, Steve Spurrier, to get it up and running. And then Urban Meyer, also one of the greatest coaches we've ever seen, to sustain it. So I think they probably did create a little bit of an illusion of, it just happens here. And it hasn't. And why that is, I don't know, Dan. I can't answer your question.
I don't know either. When a school is in this situation, oftentimes where it's about the search for a coach or searching for a coach, I know that administrators often ask themselves, like, when they're trying to decide, who to hire or who to fire, is what should we be? What are the expectations level at this place? Steve Spurrier, what he did to raise the expectation level at Florida is something that that impacts negatively most other coaches that have followed him, I feel like, and that's how it is certainly at many other places like Alabama. But Steve Spurrier was an incredible football coach, and he did a lot of winning at a lot of places, including Duke in South Carolina. So he was able to do winning virtually everywhere for at least a stretch. And so you do wonder, now I know Urban won, obviously, but again, he won everywhere that he was. So what is Florida? And it's often one of those schools where the discussion of, is this a good job or how good a job is this? Florida leads that discussion in a lot of ways because it's always the one that people in the industry kind of argue over how good it really is, the job. Like, it looks like it should be good because what Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer did, and the resources and recruiting in Florida, and in the fan interest and all this stuff. But then there are some negatives of, like facilities, right? We've all been on the Florida campus, and although they've improved and are improving, right? They aren't like the best anywhere in the best in the league. And the fans there, and there's a few fan bases like this. I would throw in Auburn and maybe LSU, perhaps Tennessee. They just remind me. They all remind me of each other, and they are just wild. And their passion sometimes is probably goes a little too far, I think. But that's how it is. That's what it is like there. And so I don't know. I don't know how good of a job it is and what they're supposed to be, but 5-7 is not what they're supposed to be.
I don't know the answer to that either. Are they unreasonable to expect to be national championship contenders? Obviously not, because it's been done. I mean, it's Florida. There are 3 big schools in the state, but it's a huge state. There's tons of people there. I know a lot of them are not going to the villages and recruiting a lot of the villages high school. Probably not producing a whole lot other than some good pickleball players or something, golf cart driving. So, the population's a little, but there's obviously enormous amounts of talent in the state of Florida. And Florida State and Miami are more than capable of shooting themselves in the foot for periods of time. Generally, these things go in cycles. Whoever's winning big then gets caught in a massive scandal, and then they fall back down. The other two rise up a little bit. But like their backyard is kind of Orlando. I mean, they're really well situated. So much talent, so close to Tampa, so close to Jacksonville. Besides the whole state, I don't know. It's always been baffling to me how they have so many 6-win seasons, 5-win seasons historically that you wouldn't see at some of these others. I mean, I think I don't know what it is. It's not lack of facilities, I guess, somewhat, but they've got a lot. Kids want to go there from all over the country. I don't know. I don't know what the expectation is. I'm looking, they have 14-28 all time against Alabama. They're losing record against Georgia, losing record against Auburn, losing record against LSU. Well, that's pretty close. 33-34-3. And then they beat up on everybody else. Tied even record with Ole Miss. So I don't know. I think Florida should be one of the best teams in the country, best programs in the country. I think if you're looking at a 12-team playoff, their floor should be like 8-4. Like it's like Penn State has consistency but not greatness, and Florida has greatness but not consistency.
Yeah.
Which would you rather have?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I will say, what was it? Gosh, was it the pandemic year where they were, or maybe 2019, where they had this great start to the season and the dude threw the shoe against LSU and it all blew up. And that's
the shoe game.
The one thing with Florida, it seems like when it gets sideways fast. And things just felt like the McElwain era just collapsed in breathtaking time. The Mullen era, which looked pretty good for a while, collapsed. And it's just, I don't know whether that is a fan environment to which Ross was talking about, or something institutionally, or what. But
you think Gator fan is crazier than other fan? I know you
don't.
compared them to the others, but
I don't. But I just wonder, like, you see these guys that seem like pretty solid coaches who just all of a sudden kind of lose it, and seasons go just completely south, and all of a sudden they're fired. It's very odd. Different dynamic there than some other places.
Yeah, it's kind of like there when it starts going south, right? It just picks up serious steam and continues that direction. And maybe it is, the fan pressure cooker type of environment there, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what else it could be, but I don't know. That's how I view it. But it is. It's in the last few years, it's especially been weird. McElwain's obviously whole tenure was an odd thing. And then the way Mullen's tenure ended, the way things went south there. And I was at the shoe game. They were rolling. I remember visiting. That was 2020. That was during COVID, the COVID season. Had they won that game against LSU and had they upset Alabama, Alabama, in the SEC championship game, which yes would have been certainly difficult. That team, ended up winning the national title, going 12-0 and winning every SEC game, all the 10 they played. But if y'all remember, they competed with them in the SEC championship game, like into the second half. I mean, so they beat LSU and they happened to close out Alabama in that game. They were going to be playing for the national champion. They were going to be in the playoff, most likely. And so you see what happened with the shoe, and they never rebounded from the shoe, and that was just a crazy game. And they haven't. And I was there to like witness it in the fog, and it was just weird. And it's like they'd never rebounded from that. And then I remember the following season, to start the season, maybe game 2, they played Alabama. They hosted Alabama at home, and I went back for that game, and I think they lost to Alabama by a point or 2 points. I want to say 32-30 or something like that. It was this tight game where they again, almost beat Saban, but then came up short in the end, and they just didn't recover from these games, the program. In Napier's hiring, I think anybody would have said that Billy Napier was the best available during the cycle 3 years ago and was the great fit for Florida. He had turned down a lot of different jobs over previous years. Billy Napier did. It just hasn't so far worked out like a lot of people said. Now, part of that was timing, right? He started during this COVID period, or during the post-COVID period and the NIL period, where you guys remember they had all the Rashada and the NIL situation with the collective and all of that craziness. So again, just more craziness.
Maybe they are crazier. Florida man. I mean, it is
Florida man,
literally by definition.
Yeah. So, I not to change this in a different direction, but a little bit. Given the fact that it's the SEC and everybody just takes each other's coaches, do they take Kiffin or Drinkwitz to replace Napier?
Oh, you want that coming in after Napier might be great because the schedule gets easier.
Yeah, can't get harder.
I don't know. I think Lane wants that. I think Lane's
I think Lane's had his eyes on Florida.
Yeah, interesting.
Pass. Yeah.
Maybe. It's an appealing place. There's only so many places you can win a national championship, and multiple coaches have won a national championship.
Right.
Florida certainly feels like that place. It is that place, and certainly, I don't know. I don't know what it is about why they haven't consistently been good, but I can see why everyone says, yeah, I'll go win there. I mean, what the heck?
Sure.
So, certainly there will be some serious, could be some serious poaching. The president, they brought back their old president. His name is Kent Fuchs, I guess. That's how you pronounce it. I was glad when he retired. It's a scary one. Last name, Fuchs. Kent, like the way I pronounce things, that can go it can go wrong real quick. So bring back Ben Sass, please. I could spell that. I could say that one. This one scares me if I'm not. I got to be on edge. Got to be prepared,
Fuchs.
Dan. Fuchs. Yeah, it might not even be the way. I'm not saying it.
It's actually, I think it's Fox.
Fox?
It's actually pronounced F-O-X. It's pronounced like it's F-O-X, I think.
I know how I want to pronounce it, and that's not the way.
That's not it, I know.
So I got to be real careful.
I'm pretty certain it's Fox. It's an odd one.
Danger zone, third rate.
I got a friend whose last name is spelled the same way, and it's pronounced Fox. So.
No Fox.
At least that's what they go with. It might be
okay. Fox.
I don't know.
Back in the old country.
Did we talk about the situation with Sass, because that could impact things too, right? I mean, you got a presidential change and all that stuff. Ben Sass,
these presidents don't run these schools.
Stepping down,
Florida man runs this school.
I think
they want him gone. He's
Florida
gone,
man.
And if you're in the way, you're gone. I don't care about the presidents. I was just making a pronunciation joke.